everybody, to another board game review by the Pixels and Papers channel. Yeah, no, I'm wearing the shirt this time. This is just a random gift that I got for shiggles. Today we're going to be talking about a game by the name of Bloodborne, the card game. This is a game based off of the hit PlayStation 4 exclusive, also titled Bloodborne, by From Software. This is a game that I have played heavily, as well as the other series like Dark Souls, Demon Souls, so on and so forth. So this game was right up my alley and was technically, I know if any of you watched the previous reviews where I talk about Legendary Marvel deck building game, you probably hear me say in that review that I never really got into card games before. This is actually a game I bought long before I tried Legendary. I just never got around to playing. Playing Legendary kind of got me open up to the idea, and I started playing more games. Bloodborne falls in a weird category because it's technically a cooperative game, but it's also a competitive game. It's real heavy on hand management. It's very heavy on like high risk, high reward. I mean, much like the game it's based on. One weird thing is that this is actually a game by Cool Mini or Not, and it's kind of strange in the fact that this game got almost no press for being a Cool Mini or Not, venture. But I think the thing that makes it unique among other Cool Mini or Not games is actually how it was released. This game was not crowdfunded. This is a game that they were contracted to do, and they did. It's by Eric Lang, who, if anyone caught the review for The Other Seven Sins, this is a game by him. And this is his effort at trying to recreate the Chalice Dungeon aspects of Bloodborne. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the gameplay side, and we're going to talk about mechanics, and then we'll render a verdict on this game. Okay, so let's start by going over some of the components for this game. The main thing that you're probably going to want to take notice of, we got the player cards laid out for each player. We're doing a 3-player run on this one. You got to have at least 3 players to play this game, honestly. As a matter of fact, the game even makes a point to tell you in its instruction manual and on the cover that this game requires that many players at the very least. First thing you're going to take note of is your blood echoes. They come in both your single blood echo quantity and your 5 quantity, the bigger one being the 5. Now, you'll also take stock that you have to the left, your player dial of your health points. Each player gets a maximum of 8. Everyone starts at that level unless stated otherwise. And you just turn the dial over to reveal your next health level whenever you take damage or heal or what have you. So on your player card, the first thing you'll probably take stock of is you have 2 sections for where you would place the blood echoes I mentioned earlier. The top section being where you place any blood echoes you've earned during a fight, and then on the bottom where you would place blood echoes that you've banked when you go to the Hunter's Dream phase of the game. And then these here are your tokens that you get as trophies when you take out certain types of monsters that correspond with those tokens. And you move those along as you gain more trophies. And these come back to benefit you at the end of the game where you get a bonus based on how many trophies you got. These are the 5 starting cards that each player receives to get them kick-started into the game. Pretty much all these cards can be expendable up to a point, but the only one you will never lose is the Hunter's Dream. Now, the other cards that you see here are the player upgrade deck. You'll always keep a number of cards face up equal to the number of players active in the game. You'll replace these as cards are taken, and they're always taken in turn order. In this case, you see here, I'm going to show you what one of the cards is. This is the cannon, and it inflicts 1 damage to each of the other hunters. So, as you can already tell, this game, as I've stated earlier, is competitive in some ways. You will be trying to take out the other players to keep them from getting more blood echoes than you. And in this one's case, also can take blood echoes away from players that play a ranged attack. Here you will see some of the final bosses of the game, which there are 5. On their cards, it shows their special boss ability that's active the entire game, as well as how many blood echoes it takes to kill them, the lantern color letting you know their difficulty, and also how many trophies they are worth. In this case, we're using Rom the Vacuous Spider. His special ability denotes that if you die for a second time, the player that died is eliminated from the game after their second death. As you see here, this is a card for the Huntsman's Minion. And this is just one of the random cards you get as your regular enemies, but you can see he has 7 Blood Echoes, so we'll put those there by his card. He also has a yellow lantern, so we'll be using the yellow die for his attack rolls. And always keep in mind on this game, you will always roll even though you reveal cards for the players first, the enemies always go first before you. Another thing it'll also show is that your enemy card will show a particular token, as I mentioned earlier. Basically, this lets you know that if you participate in killing this enemy this round, you get the skull as your trophy. And right here, I'm just going to kind of give you guys an idea of some of the other types of enemies you have in the game. Basically, you'll have 3 bosses that you'll add to your Chalice dungeon deck. And then you'll also have 7 regular enemy cards that you'll also add to that very same deck. This is the deck that I'm using to show you guys this little brief playthrough of the game. Another thing to take note of with the boss and final boss cards are that with regular enemies, when you get to the end of a round, that enemy retreats and is gone. That never to be seen or heard from again. Now, in the case of bosses and final bosses, they don't retreat at the end of the round. They stay and finish out the fight. Now, as I mentioned before, each of these dice corresponds with a type of lantern color that you have on your enemy cards. These dice will be the bane of your existence. Oh, and I almost forgot the first player token. Can't forget this because this is actually important. You'll basically have whoever starts off this first player token pass this token to the player on their left at the end of each round. Okay, so let's go ahead and go through 2 or 3 quick rounds. We're revealing cards at this phase, and basically you technically want to declare what you're going to play before you play it. Now, you don't actually have to play the card that you revealed, but in this case, since I'm the only one playing, we are playing as straight shooters here. Another thing you want to take note of is the fact that there are ranged, melee, and utility cards. Now, in this particular case, I'm keeping it pretty simple. We've got a hunter's pistol and a saw cleaver and a hunter's axe in play. Now, in most cases, ranged attacks are handled a little bit differently. Most of them are a little bit weaker. Your melee attacks tend to be a bit stronger. In this particular case, though, the left player is playing the hunter's pistol and gets to throw in some damage before the enemy actually gets to make their attack. Normally, the enemy gets their attack before the players actually get to make any type of a damage effect off of the cards they played. So we're rolling this dice, and I mean, we're going to be taking some damage on this one. So like I said, we start at 8, and we're going to be rolling back to 5 for this particular fight. The good news is that I already got to get some damage off of the enemy. I got to do 1 damage to the Huntsman's Minion before he actually got to hit me. It wasn't a lot of damage, but I also got to do some damage before the other players got to do anything. Now, let me get these out of the way because I accidentally left these up, but those are not the Huntsman's Minion's Blood Echoes. We're going to actually keep him down to his normal 7, and now he is down to 6. So we're going to go ahead and take these cards. These cards have been played, and so we're going to get Blood Echoes respectively to those players. The center player getting 1, the right player getting 2 for their respective cards. And the Huntsman's Minion, since he was not defeated, he still has Blood Echoes left. He gets to retreat on this turn at the end of this turn, which is what he's going to do now. Now, once he's gone for good. And what happens is we draw the next card. The next card is Father Gascoigne, a boss character. This boss character also has flavor text denoting that any weapon that is used to damage him this round is removed from the game at the end of the round. So that card will not come back into play. unless there's a duplicate. So we're going to go ahead and put him down. We're going to use the actual 5 Blood Echo token and throw down 3 extras for his 8 Blood Echoes. And we're also going to take the cards that were played in the previous round and put them in each player's respective discard pile. Now we're going to pass the first player token to the leftmost player, so it'll actually go over to the right player, oddly enough. But we're going around the table. So that player is going to be the one whose actions will actually take place first and foremost. So we've already got some cards picked out that are going to be played. And once we do, we are still dealing with Father Gascoigne. So the players have a choice to make. They, being in the shape they're in, some of them, if not all of them, should probably make for the Hunter's Dream. But we're going to see what happens when only one player makes that decision, and the other players make, decisions of varying other degrees. So let's do the reveal phase for the cards. We're going to flip everything over, and so we have the rightmost player doing transform, the center player choosing to use the Hunter's Dream, and the leftmost player choosing to attack. Now, in this case, a transform card, this basically dictates that player doesn't have to play a card necessarily right then and there, but they get an opportunity to see what the other players are playing, and then they can choose. Now, with the Hunter's Dream card, you are stepping out of combat. Now, that doesn't make you immune to damage. You still take damage from enemy attacks. You just take that damage in half, rounded down. Now, in this particular case, since the rightmost player chose to use Transform, they still have to play at least a melee or range card. They cannot just rely on the simple mechanic of the Transform card alone. Since we played the Hunter's Pistol, we're going for immediate damage again, so we're going to go ahead and take our 1 Blood Echo before Father Gascoigne gets a chance to attack. Now, we're going to go ahead and roll because he has the red dice. Let's see what we get. Let's see, we got a 2, and let's see, so that means basically every character is going to be taking 2 damage, with the exception of the center player who chose to go to the Hunter's Dream. He'll only take 1 damage. Now, I do want to touch on the Hunter's Dream real quick. At the end of the round that they played the Hunter's Dream card, they get to bank their Blood Echoes they've collected up to this point. They also get to take back all action cards in their used and discard pile. And then, in player order, they get to take 1 Hunter Upgrade card from the Hunter Upgrade card deck. As so long as they don't max out of 7 cards, you get 7 cards, you have to get rid of a card. And then they also get to reset their health back to the maximum of 8, or whatever the maximum is for that game. So let's skip ahead a little bit. I want to touch on what happens when a player dies, and also when the game mechanic comes back to bite you. Now, when you roll a die, they also have a little cross symbol on them sometimes. This means you roll that dice again and add the next result to the number you originally got. So we got 2 plus another 2, and so we got another cross, so we got to roll again. And this time, luckily, we come up with 0, which is hard to come up on with a red die. And in this case, we have some players who are going to be suffering. Okay, guys, so we are back, and we just got done showing you the mechanics of the game, how it works. Briefly, I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time getting bogged down in the minutia of the game, because, I mean, it's one of those, it's actually a very simplistic game. There's not really a whole lot of crazy rules going on, but I'll get into that in a minute. First things first, I actually want to talk about the price point on this game. This game is actually a pretty good deal. Originally, when I purchased this game, it was around $30, but it's actually, you can catch it for as low as like 25. I've even seen as low as 20, depending on where you go. Not a bad buy-in for a game that is, it's got some pretty solid components to it for the most part. And I guess we'll go ahead and roll right into that next part. We are going to talk about the graphics and the components. Basically what they're using is stock footage from the game itself. So I mean, a lot of what you're going to see here, if you've seen the game, you've played it, then you know what you're about to get. I mean, it's literally like captures from the game itself. and other promotional material surrounding the game. Outside of that, as far as like the card stock, the player character boards, the Blood Echo tokens and all that stuff, everything's fine. I mean, it's pretty standard fare. I mean, it's what you would expect from a Cool Mini or Not project. Let's talk about learning curve and the rule book. The learning curve of this game is actually not bad. I mean, at first when I was reading the rule book, I think because of the way it is laid out and the way that they explain the rules to you, some of it may feel out of order. At least it did to me. But I will say that I did thoroughly, get a good grasp of how the game works. There were a couple of rules I was a little hazy on, and I might still be a little hazy on, but I mean, for the most part, I feel like I got a clear understanding after a couple of passes through on the rule book, and then once actually sitting down with the game and playing it with some friends, I realized, like, oh wow, this actually is, pretty easy. I mean, now I will say this, the thing that's difficult about the game is that it is very punishing. And as you probably saw when I was, running you through the mechanics, is that, I mean, it's not hard to find yourself, in a bad way, just based on a bad dice roll or a bad hand that you pull. I mean, it can get pretty ugly. I would dare say bowling shoe ugly. The next thing I want to touch on is replayability and fun factor. I think this game is going to be really fun for a lot of people, but I will say that depending on your table and your group that you normally run with, this is going to be one of those games that your mileage may vary. Some people will probably find the challenge, really invigorating and fun, as I did. But I also feel that some people would probably get turned away from it. And honestly, I'm going to tell you right now, if you were the type of person who would play a game like Dark Souls or Bloodborne or other games like it, like Neo or other such games, you will probably be right at home with this game. If you're the type of person who shies away from those types of games, you probably will not do well with this. And I would even say that, even other, I mean, I'm talking about video games here, comparing them to this game, but I mean, it does hold true. If you don't have that type of mindset for a high-risk, high-reward game, you're probably not going to do well with this. The last thing I'm going to talk about is going to be, and I actually saved this for last because technically it's kind of one of the weirdo spots for me, is the setup time. Setup time in this game is actually relatively quick, and so is the breakdown time. I do feel that the way that you figure out your monsters and your bosses and whatnot, they tell you to do them at random, but me personally, I kind of just like to choose them. Because honestly, there are some of the enemies, some of the bosses and enemies are kind of easy to beat sometimes, depending on which ones you get. A lot of the regular enemies are kind of samey, and I mean, it'd just be nice to kind of mix it up and have what you want in there and kind of homebrew it up. But, I mean, that doesn't mean that, that makes the game bad, but I mean, I feel like technically if you want to get the best bang for your buck, I would just pick whatever enemies you want. Pick your 7 random, regular enemies, and then pick your 3, handpick your 3 boss enemies, and then, of course, handpick your, the boss that you want to fight against. And I would even say, I would take a page out of the last review I did for 5 Minute Dungeon. I would say if you want to make a run out of this game, I'd say fight them in order. Mix up the deck. I mean, play the regular enemies as random picks, but I would actually say go through the final bosses as, in order, or as much order as you can, and just say, hey, do this one now, the next one, and this one, because it does change the mechanics of the game. The replayability alone, I didn't mention this in the replayability part, but I mean, the replayability alone is, I think, would be more enhanced as a result of that. Okay, so let's render a verdict here. This game is, I would have to give it a pretty, I'll give it a fair recommendation. I mean, like I said, I think, once again, your mileage is probably going to vary. I mean, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. But as far as, like, just to the casual board game goer, I mean, you might take it or leave it. But I feel like if you like games like Kingdoms or King of Tokyo, or games that kind of encourage you to, be a dick to, the other people playing the game with you. And by dick, I mean, don't be mean to them, but I mean, play competitively and play hard at them. I mean, I think this would be right up your alley. So yeah, I'm going to give it just a plain, regular recommendation. As always, I want to say thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and if you enjoyed it, if you liked it, if you got anything out of it, please let me know with a like and a comment. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Once again, thank you for watching, and may your successes be critical and your failures not so much. See you later.